£40 billion. No, that's not my annual average spend on wine. That's the total increase in taxes that Rachel Reeves announced in last week's mega budget. And what we all want to know is, how is it going to affect us in the FMCG industry? Now, I'm in no position to comment on how changes to inheritance tax will affect farmers, and I certainly have no plans for the VAT on private school fees to have an impact on me, although I do sympathise with those that it will. However, running a recruitment business, I know a thing or two about national insurance. I also know how employee costs affect my own hiring decisions. I'm also fairly au fait with business asset disposal relief and capital gains tax, and how it may have impacted my choices when I decided to risk it all and set up Signature. And having worked in and around the FMCG industry for the best part of 2 decades, and working closely with founders and leadership teams, I have a good idea about how the budget announcement will influence their decisions moving forward. So, having pitched my credibility, this is how I think last week's announcements will affect the FMCG job space specifically, and unfortunately, from where I'm standing, it doesn't look great. Before I get started, it's important to understand that the FMCG job space has been experiencing challenges long before Rachel Reeves let rip last week. In an article from July 2013 entitled FMCG's Not Got Talent, it was reported that years of falling investment had left a lack of seasoned operators coming through the ranks. Fast forward 11 years and it doesn't seem to have improved, with the food and drink industry feeling the lead to launch a campaign specifically to combat the labour shortages highlighted by an independent review. And this all fits with what we've been seeing in recruitment, particularly since COVID, where certain sectors of the industry that were decimated by lockdowns saw talent leave and never return. So, with announced increases in employer NI and the minimum wage driving up the cost of employment, at the same time as the muted £5 billion annual costs to UK firms for implementing the new Employment Rights Bill, how will this affect an industry already struggling to bring new talent through? So, let's first look more closely at the increased costs to employers that have resulted from the new budget. With the announcement that the national minimum wage is going up by 6.7%, this represents an additional cost of £1,675 for entry-level candidates. Couple this with the additional £825 associated with the national insurance increase at this level, and employers will be forking out an extra £2,500 a year for those on the lowest income. Those most likely impacted by these decisions will be people first entering the industry on training schemes, because if you suddenly add an additional £2,500 a year to the training costs of each individual, the chances are businesses will start pedalling back their training programs and start looking to hire people who are already the finished article. There's an argument that the lower salaries of trainees will offset some of the increase in national insurance, but given that the average job tenure of Gen Z is now as low as 2 years and 2 months, it's increasingly likely that businesses will conclude that training schemes may never offer a return on investment. The result of this is less training programs, less opportunity, less people joining the industry, and a bottleneck of talent further down the line. Not great for an industry already on the back foot. On first impressions, the increase in minimum wage may sound like a good pay rise, but 6.7% of nothing is nothing if you can't find a job. At the end of the day, you can't heap a load of additional costs onto a business and expect them just to take it. Stakeholders have margins that they want to make, and whether it's cutting back on marketing spend, freezing pay increases, or scaling back training programs, these are immediate ways in which the FMCG job space is going to be impacted. But what about the long term? Let's take a look at the other tax increases announced. Well, the increases in capital gains tax and business asset disposal relief means that this budget is the gift that keeps on giving. There's no doubt that entrepreneurs have it in their blood, and regardless of the tax implications, they'd start businesses and throw everything into growing them. But it only takes one person to decide that the reward isn't worth the risk, and immediately you're taking jobs and opportunity away from the industry. You only have to look how many of the businesses that appear on Dragon's Den are from the FMCG industry to realise that it's going to be disproportionately affected by any reduction in new products and businesses being launched as a result of these tax changes. I'm not denying that difficult decisions needed to be made, but look at this through the lens of the FMCG industry. It appears that we are going to be hit particularly hard as these new measures place a real strain on talent pools. So what's the answer? Well, as far as access to talent goes, businesses need to prepare for lean times ahead because all signs suggest shortages are going to get worse, not better. The proverbial recruitment bun fights are going to get more intense. The best candidates will become even more passive as they're continually peppered by speculative recruiters, and counteroffers are going to be increasingly higher to fend off the disruption of having to dip into the market. So businesses will need to be more strategic to counteract these challenges if they don't want to resort to upping their salaries, which, let's face it, aren't going to be feasible in the aftermath of national insurance rises. And although it may feel counterintuitive to invest in recruitment at a time when costs are rising, when it comes to competing in a challenging labour market, you've got to speculate to accumulate.